Welcome to Golden Blue, everybody, home of the college football fan. And don't forget about the checklist. Hat check, sunglasses check, Pepsi check, notes check, sources check, and thick skin is a check. And don't forget to sing gear to represent your team and yourself in my background. Send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina, 29657, and get yourself a shout out. On to the next video. In case you're wondering, these are the teams that we don't have represented for the mini helmets. As you can see, we actually have quite a few big brands that's not represented here at Golden Blue. So get your team represented here on Golden Blue. And you already know what time it is, so might as well sit down, brace yourself, and buckle up because you are entering the speculation zone. A lot of people overlook something very, very important. The conference itself doesn't make these expansions decisions strictly on their own. This is a conference/network decision. In other words, the networks have a say in it. Here's a good example. Back whenever the SEC added Texas A&M and Missouri, the SEC actually wanted Texas A&M and West Virginia. It came down to Texas A&M, Missouri, or West Virginia. They wanted Texas A&M and West Virginia. But ESPN was like, whoa. We want that Kansas City TV market, so let's go get Missouri. What happened? The SEC ended up getting Texas A&M and Missouri. So these networks have a strong influence, a very strong influence on who these conferences bring in. Remember, they're the ones that's paying the big bucks to these conferences. I have to mention our favorite college football conspiracy theorist, MacGyver. And I've already quoted this, but I want to mention it again because it's relevant to this video. This was on Selection Sunday. On this Selection Sunday, I have one morsel to share. I've just been told Fox will play ball with the Big 12 for Parada for 2 all-sports editions. Fox wants Arizona and Colorado. So it does seem like Fox wants Colorado and Arizona. They don't want Utah in the Big 12. That's why I made a video yesterday that the Big Ten could be looking at Utah. Remember, Fox has the main rights to both the Big Ten and the Big 12. Well, the Big 12 already has BYU, so they already have a footprint in the state of Utah. So grabbing Utah, yes, Utah is a good brand. They have a great fan base. They've won the Pac-12 2 years in a row. You would be locking in the Holy War. A lot of pros to adding Utah to the Big 12, but even bigger pros to adding Utah to the Big 10. And the argument yesterday was Utah over Oregon. In other words, Utah and Washington to the Big 10. Utah has better academics than Oregon. Utah has won the Pac-12 2 years in a row. Utah is an up-and-coming brand. And as far as TV viewership, you're choosing the third most watched over number 1, and that's Oregon. So it's not a huge gap. It's not like you're choosing the 6th best team or the last place team over the 1st place team. You're choosing the 3rd place team over the 1st place team. And it's because they don't have a footprint in the state of Utah, but the Big 12 does. And Utah's academics are way better than Oregon. And they bring in way more research money than Oregon. Remember, the Big 10 is a Commonwealth conference. It is a shared conference. Everybody shares their resources. Utah has more resources than Oregon. That could be why the Big Ten could potentially be interested in Utah over Oregon. However, that could be completely false. Maybe the Big Ten still wants Washington and Oregon. Like I say about a lot of things, you don't know what's actually going to happen until it happens. All this is strictly speculation. Speaking of MacGyver and Utah, here's what he said about Utah. I don't really have a source close to that program, but I can just reiterate what I tweeted a couple weeks ago. Utah isn't a high priority and is very low on the Big 12 radar. So there, once again, that's saying the Big 12 really isn't interested in Utah. Why? It would be because Fox is saying, pass on Utah, we want them to go to the Big 10. And yes, by the way, this will be a Get It Gang video idea. If you don't know what the Get It Gang is, it's basically a name that I came up with for the group of people that come up with video ideas and leave them in the comment section of my videos. So if you think that you have a good video idea, leave it in the comment section of this video or any video, and I just might use it on my next video. This is from Ed Carmen. Ed Carmen has been a known troll to Golden Blue, but he does have some good comments here and there. He says what Fox really wants is Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, Miami, Virginia, Duke, Georgia Tech, and Notre Dame in the Big 10, and Virginia Tech, Louisville, Pittsburgh, Pitt, Syracuse, NC State, and Wake Forest in the Big 12. Fox may have to force the Big 12 to do what they say. Big 12 seems to be fixated on the West Coast. Football nobody cares about. I would disagree about that last part. I do think that people care about the West Coast football, but it has been down. It hasn't really been relevant. But if they were to start making the playoffs more often, then they would be more relevant and more people would care. And that's why playoff expansion was so important. That way you can guarantee that some of these West Coast teams actually make the playoffs, and there's actually some representation in the playoffs with that expansion. But it's interesting to see that he thinks that Fox only wants the East Coast teams and the Big 12 is fixated on the West Coast teams, and that Fox may have to force the Big 12 to not get those West Coast teams, but focus on the East Coast teams. Is that possible? Yes. Do I think that's actually what's happening? No. I think Fox is okay and actually wants the Big 12 to grab at least 2 teams of the Pac-12, and that's Arizona and Colorado. And make no mistake about it, the Big 12 has been talking to the Four Corners. Now, where they actually jumped the Big 12, that remains to be seen. Even after that forward tweet by the Utah Athletic Director, Mark Harlan, give me a break on a Dennis Dodd tweet. He's still tweeting. Dennis Dodd has great sources. Remember, he's been doing this for 25 years. He called Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC before anybody else. He also called USC and UCLA to the Big Ten before anybody else. And he's still tweeting. He said, sources, the Big 12 continues to speak weekly, every week, to expansion candidates. And the 2 teams that they are targeting, Arizona and Colorado. So Fox is going to be okay with Arizona and Colorado and then turn their attention over to the East Coast because the ACC is looking a little bit shaky right now. And I know everybody says nobody is getting out of those grant of rights. And you might be right. Maybe the ACC does survive till 2036. But I think in 2036, if everything stays the same and the ACC stays intact, I think they'll be in the same position as the Pac-12. They simply just bought themselves time. Because even if the ACC can get a better TV deal, it will still be nothing compared to the Big Ten or the SEC. And these teams really want to jump to the Big Ten and the SEC. And then the Big 12 can swoop in and get your Syracuse brand, your Louisville brand, your Pitt brand, and maybe either a Virginia Tech or an NC State brand, whichever one the SEC passes on. So Ed Carmen, you're sort of right, but you're sort of wrong. I think Fox is certainly okay with the Big 12 adding Arizona and Colorado. Now, anything beyond that, I'm not sure. Because I'm hearing that they don't want the Big 12 to grab Utah, and we're hearing from Arizona State, which I did a video on this earlier in the day, come out and say that they're not even talking to the Big 12, which that's hogwash. They have been talking to the Big 12, but they're really not interested in joining the Big 12. Remember the plausible deniability comment that I've made? And I did an entire video based solely on plausible deniability. This is post-production going unbluted, but I wanted to include this clip because I saw this after I made this video, and I think it needs to be included. This is a tweet from Rick Jr. Said tidbits from University of Arizona President Robert Robbins chat with John Wilner. Reiterates, the PAC wants to stay together. No school would leave for the Big 12 prior to being presented with a media rights deal. All comes down to Kliavkoff crafting a good deal. So these teams, they really do want to stay in the Pac-12. There's no doubt about that. They just don't have a lot of trust in George Kliavkoff because he hasn't made any good decisions up until now. So what we're going to see is we're going to see a deal being presented to these teams. If it's good enough, everybody will stay together, even if it's just for a short time and they'll have to go through it all over again. But if it's as bad as everybody thinks it's going to be, then these teams will start jumping to the Big 12. They have been talking to the Big 12, but they will not leave for the Big 12 until they see this media rights deal presented by George Kliavkoff. No pressure, George Kliavkoff. Only the entire future of the Pac-12 hangs on your shoulders right now. Another good game comment. Jacob Wilson says, going to Bluetooth. If Fox Sports did order Big 12 not to get Utah, could Fox Sports also order Big 10 not to get Utah as well? And could Utah be in trouble? I mean, that's a possibility, but I don't think Utah's in trouble. Utah is a great brand. They have great research and academics. And even if the Big Ten ends up not getting Utah, I think Utah would then join the Big 12. And I know Fox isn't keen on Utah joining the Big 12 because they already have BYU. But if the Big Ten doesn't agree with Fox and they say there's no way we're adding Utah, we're getting Washington and Oregon, then Fox would then turn and say, all right, come on, bring on Utah. Utah's not in any trouble whatsoever. They're not going to get left behind. They're too good of a brand. They've won the Pac-12 2 years in a row. Their fan base is a really good fan base. And I mentioned all the other pros as far as adding Utah. Not to mention locking in the Holy War. That would make some money for the Big 12. So y'all let me know in the comment section. Do you think Fox and the Big 10 plus the Big 12 are in agreement on the teams that they want, whoever those teams may be, and that they're not going to have any conflict of interest in bringing in certain teams? Number 2, do you think Fox wants the Big 10 to grab Utah and not the Big 12? I certainly think it's a possibility. And number 3, do you think Fox wants the Big 10 and the Big 12 to limit the number of teams that they want to get out of the Pac-12? That way they can have more spots open for teams out of the ACC. Remember, this isn't just about the here and now. They have to make decisions and plans based for the future as well. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.